If you leave your time to randomness, you are stealing from your greatness.
Necessity is kind of short for performance necessity, or what we call psychological necessity, which means there is a moment in which you are serving people or you're trying to achieve your goal or your dream in which now it is not a preference, it's a must.
Execution and scale is really important to long-term high performance. Creativity might get you in the game, but a lot of people are creative but can't work their way out of a bag.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
Need motivation?
Watch the top 10 of Believe Nation because I love it.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You have Michael Jordan level talent at something. So get ready to seek clarity, decide to change, and raise necessity with Brendon Burchard and my take on his top 10 rules of success to give you the confidence, motivation, and belief that you need. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1, bring the joy.
The power plant doesn't have energy, it generates energy. And I've been teaching that for like 15 years on stage. And one guy stands up one time and he goes, actually, you're wrong. At my event, there's 2,000 people at my event. He goes, well, you're actually wrong. I'm like, oh, how am I wrong? He says, well, a power plant doesn't generate energy. What it does is it takes energy from one source, upgrades it, so transforms the energy, then stores it and transmits it. So it's really transforming energy from one sort of location or one type of energy to another.
Right.
And I love that metaphor because I felt like that's my job. So much of my life is helping people reach another level of energy. Because if you don't reach another level of energy, you can't serve at another level. If you don't reach another level of energy, you can't feel better, be happier, be a better spouse. It's like everyone says, I want that next level, but they don't understand energy is the requirement to get there. And when we measured energy in our studies, we were talking about really mental energy, emotional energy, and physical energy. And it was a huge turning point in my life when I started realizing these things because, that whole thing that we as entrepreneurs, we want to wait for maybe one day I'll feel energized, or maybe one day I'll feel joy, right. Or maybe one day I can have fun after, all the money's in the bank. And you got the house or the cars or the money or the stuff. And then people go, then I'm gonna be really a fun person. It's like, no, if you're not a fun person when you're broke, you're not gonna be that much more fun when you're rich. And I think that people have to learn to bring the joy. It's one of our little taglines on our shirts, right? Bring the joy. And that says, you don't have joy, just like I don't think people have happiness. I don't think people have sadness either. I think that we are generating the emotions and the feelings that we experience in life. And as soon as we own that responsibility, life gets really fun.
Rule number 2, know how to execute and scale.
Creativity is not strongly correlated with high performance. And if you told me that 7 years ago, I would have fought with you for like 2 or 3 hours. But then in one interview with one of the world's largest CTOs, Chief Technology Officers, he said, Brendon, they're a top 10 brand in the world. He said, we don't, he said, my team, he said, I'm not creative. My team's not creative, but we know how to execute and scale. And execution and scale is really important to long-term high performance. Creativity might get you in the game, but a lot of people are creative but can't work their way out of a bag. And I was like, I would have argued that forever because I'm a creative, I'm a writer and a coach. And I would have never thought that.
Rule number 3, have discipline.
If you're not doing block time, here's what your day might look like. You have all these different slots of time, right? And you're just gonna plug in as you go through the day. You're gonna plug in, I'll work some there, and I'll work some there, and then I'll try to cram stuff up. Right at the end of the day, I'll try to cram that sucker in. Any crammers? Okay, just checking. No judgment. You're just not going as fast as you could. That's all. Crammers, I love crammers. Just like, because they're easy to get to move faster, because you do have that diligence of when there's a deadline and it's on, you can go, which really serves you. But we got to take you from a crammer to a preparer to a high performer. And the way that we do that is to look at this and go, listen, if you keep leaving all these time slots to randomness, what happens is they start to get filled with the big D. Distraction. Some reason it seems like this hit home for some people. I don't know why. How many recognize what I'm talking about here? So now you add up, take this out. You might not be thinking too seriously about it, but let's say that's like a day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 work hours. You didn't know I drew that on purpose. If you leave your time to randomness, you are stealing from your greatness. If you leave your time to randomness, you are stealing from your greatness bit by bit, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year, and decade by decade. And it's the little things like this where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't get anything done because you've got all these random approaches to your day.
Rule number 4, make conscious decisions.
Your life doesn't end up an accident. Your life is a series of actions that you initiate or don't initiate. And that your thoughts are going to control that roadmap. And so how are you using your mind today to either make yourself feel great or not? I posted on Instagram this morning. I said, listen, your destiny is ultimately controlled by a decision you already made this morning. Everyone watching this already made a decision this morning. This morning, they made it a life-changing, huge decision this morning. And that is either I'm going to get up, enter the world with no intention, go through the motions to hopefully get by or survive, or I am going to get clear in this morning about what I want, what I'm going after, who I'm going to be, how I'm going to serve, and whether or not I'm going to be excellent and extraordinary or not. And the problem is most people never make that conscious decision. So I was learning early on, make the conscious decision about who you want to be each day, stay congruent with that. And that was, for me, a kid who was just going through the motions, all of a sudden going, oh, who do I want to be? What do I want my relationships to be like? That was really important. And then I started setting personal challenges every month.
Also, if you want to have more confidence and self-love, check out my 254 series. They're free. The links to join are in the description below.
It's so unfortunate because I think doubt is one of the greatest enemies of our lives. And it's so easy to overcome, but most people won't practice the discipline of overcoming it. You must define your mission. You need to have a mission for what you're doing today. Successful people say, well, I want to do that, but I don't know how to do that. But instead of stopping, they say, well then, my job is to go learn that.
Rule number 5, don't look for gratitude.
I'm a writer, I'm a coach, and I'm a trainer. My job is to share things that are relevant to the teaching point. So it's what am I trying to teach? Now I'll share case studies about my life or some research, but it's pretty limited towards only what I'm teaching. And people sign up for me to teach a very specific thing. So they're not seeing the whole picture of my life. They're just learning that specific thing. So I think it also left a lot of people going, okay, he's super successful, but I don't know anything about him.
Right.
And that created...
It's hard to trust people you don't know anything about.
Yes. Or you read the Motivation Manifesto, right? There is no Brendon in that book. The publisher famously turned down the book. We had a $2 million book deal. I turned in the book, and the editor goes, what the hell is this? You wrote it like it's 1776. There's not one story of you in here. Your audience wants to know about you. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I'm writing for. I'm writing for the art. And so they said, we can't publish and we can't this book is unmarketable.
So you wrote a $2 million check back.
Wrote it back, which is painful because I'd already spent it. But
then you went and sold 1 million copies.
Yeah, then we went into 32 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list after they turned it down.
With no publisher. Well, I guess you had
we went to Hay House and they supported it and distributed it and did a great job on it. And I love them and their community really got behind the book because they knew I wrote it for the art, not for I didn't sell out on the book. This was my artistic. My art has never been like talking about Brendon. My art has been, I want to teach, but I want to teach in a way that really hits you in the heart and gives you habits that you can implement in your life. But that also took me out of the picture a little bit because I didn't want to be the guru. I didn't want to be, I'm from Montana. We're pretty private there. And one of our main sayings there is, the time to have the map is before you enter the woods. So I just wanted to hand people the map. I didn't want to hand people like, look at me. I also had a big influence from my high school journalism teacher. And she said, there's two kinds of people. One who walks into a room and goes, here I am. And the other person walks into a room and goes, there you are.
Rule number 6, raise necessity.
Necessity is kind of short for performance necessity, or what we call psychological necessity, which means there is a moment in which you are serving people or you're trying to achieve your goal or your dream in which now it is not a preference, it's a must, right? But to use better languaging, it becomes necessary for us to excel in this. Like it's not a hope anymore, it's not, it should do it. It becomes so necessary that it connects with our identity, that we feel it is necessary for me to deliver with excellence here because that is who I am. It's necessary for me to deliver with excellence here because somebody needs me to do well. It's necessary for me to do well here because this topic, this thing I'm doing, I'm passionate about this, I care about this, I want to master this. I'm obsessed with this. And it's necessary for me to do well because of the time, it's a deadline or it's go time. And when all those come together, that personal side of this is my identity and I'm obsessed about it, and that other side where it's like somebody needs me and there is a real deadline, right in the middle, that's performance necessity. And when we hit that, game changer.
Rule number 7, change your interpretations.
In our lives, especially when we're being reactive, information comes in, right? We're at an event, we're paying attention to how people treat us, we're studying something, we're trying to learn something, and we're just going about our regular day. Information is coming in. How people perceive us, the cause and effect of events, things are just happening. Information comes into the brain. From that point, the information immediately goes into interpretation. And what this usually means is interpretation in the fast reactive thing is safe, unsafe, good, bad, like it, don't like it, recognize it, don't recognize it. Been there, done that, unfamiliar, familiar, certain, uncertain, fear, safe. All these things start triggering. It's pretty unconscious and it's pretty fast. Our biases come into play. It's just that speed, spontaneous, reactive part of us. And that's not always bad. Sometimes it can be good, right? Sometimes it can be good. Interpretation can be that event, that's good for me. Or that event, that's bad for me. But usually it's like a snap judgment. Think about that. Most when we're talking about an unconscious level, it's like a snap judgment, automatic. Like you like her or don't like her. Feel safe, don't feel safe. It's very fast. Then the next level, and this is not always linear, of course, because your brain is not left brain, right brain kind of methodology. Your brain's more of a spider web of interconnectiveness that is something we still don't understand, okay? You can study everything in neuroscience and you might learn something about this lobe or that cortex region, but then only to find out that later on, a year later, like, well, actually it seems like it's also communicating over here. It's a spider web of unbelievable intelligence that's happening. And everything can be hundreds of milliseconds of transitions between neural networks. It's unbelievably fast, unbelievably capable. So this is just for our understanding. It's not necessarily real world linear like this, but what tends to happen is as information comes in, good, bad, we also then move it to a level of, well, what does this mean to me? Identity. What does this mean to me? What does this either mean to me or what does this say about me? How does this apply to me? And if we're not conscious here, this can be really troublesome. Some of you discovered that yesterday, I bet, when you released a few things. Sometimes we have these events in our life that we take on and we just assume it meant something about us. And we didn't realize, no, that's more of a statement about them than it is about us, right? Sometimes when you're hurt or someone was rude to you, it had nothing to do with you. Raise your hand if you follow. It had nothing to do with you. But if you're not careful, you could say, mean person, unsafe, means I'm bad child. Rude behavior uncertain about this, I must not belong. Terrible situation, I feel bad, I can never be safe again. How many follow how this happens? This is why we have to be very, very, very observational of our own thoughts and feelings, because how these things get labeled can really change our lives forever.
My friend Evan Carmichael's book, listen, humans are built to serve. Some people are built to serve the world, others want to serve the 25 people closest to them. But in either case, humans are built to serve. So if you're not happy right now, it's because you're not serving enough. You got to pick up this book because it's so inspiring to remind you that we're all here to contribute, to make a difference, to make an impact, and this is your field guide for that.
Rule number 8, seek clarity.
High performers seek clarity more often than their peers. And what that means for them is every situation they go into, they're seeking clarity and setting intention. And it's not like once in a while, they're doing it way more often. It's like, I've been blessed to work with Oprah Winfrey. When she has a meeting, at the start of every meeting, she asks, what's our intention here? What's the intention of this meeting? Not what's the agenda, what do I do? What's the intention? That's every meeting. So she's seeking clarity at the beginning of every meeting. That's why she's so amazing, right? If you think about her whole career, she was always trying to have people seek clarity on who they were so they could be themselves. That's what high performers are doing. They just do it more often. They seek clarity before they shoot that video, before they have the podcast interview. But specifically, we found 3 practices help you get better at seeking clarity. Number 1, they are seeking clarity in what we call the future 4. So you've probably heard that successful people are more future-minded. It's true. And specifically what they're looking at, if you talk to a high performer, they're more clear about who do I want to be in this upcoming situation. And by the way, it's not about who I am. It's about who do I want to be. They're more future-oriented. They're more intentional about who they want to be in social situations. So it's like, I want to have this type of interaction with Louis today. That's intentional. They're more clear about what skills they need to develop to reach their next level of success.
Right.
Here's how you really know an underperformer. Open up their calendar and look for any evidence that they have planned their own curriculum for greatness. If they don't have classes or courses, if they're not actively skill building, there's no chance of high performance.
Rule number 9, decide to change.
People take an eye-opening experience and some don't do anything with it, and some people grow from it. And I came back from that experience, I was in college, and prior to coming back, I was the depressed kid, the sad kid, kind of the lonely kid, kind of the pull away from the world kid because I was hurt. I came back and I had this new intention to live. So I wanted to meet people and talk to people, and they're like, who are you? And anytime you change your life, usually people are like, what's wrong with you? So everyone's like, what's wrong with you? But I was like, I'm gonna change. Because I knew I didn't want misery anymore. I didn't want suffering. I didn't want sadness. I didn't want negative thinking. I didn't want poor quality of relationships. I didn't want to feel horrible. So I began the quest of, well, how do I not feel horrible? So I started reading, first I started with personal development, self-help, then jumped into spirituality, then jumped into psychology, then jumped into neuroscience, then jumped into sociology, then jumped into leadership, and spent every week for 23 years, I've read a week on one of those topics for 23 years. I went to the seminars, I bought the audio courses, so I'm listening to Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill and Earl Nightingale and Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and Louise Hay and Marianne Williamson and Debbie Ford and Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Brian Tracy, and I went down deep. Like, I'm very much like you, I'm obsessive. So I got obsessive into psychology. Carl Rogers, Alfred Adler, Roy Baumeister, Abraham Maslow, all of the positive psychology work that was developing at the time that was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is be careful about your intentions.
From here, once we've kind of looked through that lens, and again, this is gonna be unconscious and super speedy, but once we kind of, information comes in, good, bad, here's what it means to me, we tend to then from there set an intention. Which means, so what do I want to do with this information? Intention. What's my next action from this? Or what am I gonna do in the future because of this? And intentions can be very unhealthy too. Intentions can be, like we talked about yesterday, sometimes if this is wired wrong, or this goes in a way that doesn't support us, sometimes that intention is, I'm gonna protect myself. I am never going to share who I am because that one person or those people hurt my feelings or did that thing. And all of a sudden, our intentions become completely self-protective. I talked about yesterday how people button up, or they put on the face mask, or they build up the walls to the bad guys, and then who can't get in? The good guys. Like I said yesterday, sometimes in our own self-protection, we block out the very thing that we so desperately desire, connection. But a lot of people's intention has been throughout their lives, because they weren't observing their thoughts, became completely tilted towards safety, so they think. There's a big difference between wanting to be safe and operating from fear.
Now I have a special bonus clip from Brendon on how to be more intentional that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Let's go from just watching a video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1. Where do you need to decide to change? Number 2, how can you raise necessity around that change? And number 3, where do you need to have more discipline? And if you made it this far in a video and you are committed to making a change, I wanna celebrate you. Give me a hashtag believe down in the comments as well.
Great athletes, great performers, an executive walking into an important meeting, you gotta go deal with your kid who's struggling with math. When we walk into those situations, we have to set intention for what we want to do in that situation, and we have to release tension. And so the practices in high performance habits, that was the second big finding that we had, was high performers are generating the energy, and that means the mental, emotional, physical energy that they feel is necessary to serve with excellence in a certain situation. Like, they're so conscious of it. And I know that's common sense for people, but it's not always common practice.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a lot of people just wander into that situation, and I'm the guy who says, you know what, get more intentional, release the tension you have, walk in as your highest self, because that's something you'll never regret.
If you want more wisdom from Gary Vaynerchuk, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
It's ideology versus practicality. Ideology always loses unless you start making it practical. There's a lot of people that give